Good evening, welcome to the September 17th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. Please rise for the invocation of allegiance. Just last week we passed the 13th anniversary of 9/11. As it's been tradition over the years during my invocation of that week, I've read an excerpt from President Bush's address to the nation on September 14th, 2001. From the National Cathedral. I think it's a fitting tribute to the events of the day. Please join me in prayer. He said, "At St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York on Tuesday, a woman said, 'I pray to God to give us a sign that he's still here.' Others have prayed for the same, searching hospital to hospital, carrying pictures of those still missing. God's signs, though, aren't always the ones we look for. We learn in tragedy that his purposes are not always our own. Yet the prayers of private suffering, whether in our homes or in this great cathedral, are known and heard and understood. There are the prayers that help us last through the day or endure the night. There are the prayers of friends and strangers that give us strength for the journey. And there are the prayers that yield our will to a will greater than our own. This world he created is of moral design. Grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness, remembrance, and love have no end. And the Lord of life holds all who die and all who mourn. As we've been assured, neither death nor life nor angels, nor principalities nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height nor depth can separate us from God's love." Please take a moment of silence and remember the nearly 3,000 victims September 11, 2001. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please record the roll.
Councilman Martin?
Here.
Councilman Pittavani?
Here.
Let the record show Councilman Lantar is absent. Councilwoman Rosbowski? Here. Supervisor Ketzley?
Here, there's a few changes to the agenda, just so everybody's on the same page. We do have 3 add-ons. One add-on is already listed. That add-on resolution is to correct a typographical error in a local law that was previously passed, Local Law 141 of 2014, whereby an error regarding multifamily residence is listed as a permitted use in the site plan, and it is not. So that will be corrected in this resolution. Resolution 2 relates to the town's search for a DCO to replace the retiring current DCO, and Resolution 3 relates to a cell tower, removing of a cell tower and an arrangement with the town of Rotterdam. We will then, after item 14, have the town budget hearings for the remaining budget departments, which are listed here, and we'll go through that when we get to that spot. And then we will go into an executive session after that to discuss a personnel matter. You're free to stay. We go in the other room. We come back out. We don't anticipate any further business after that, so I wouldn't suggest you stay. From the point of view, I don't think we'll do anything more public after that executive session. So with that, we'll move on to item number 4 and get moving with the agenda and start with town council reports on my left with Councilwoman Rosbowski.
No report at this time, Mr. Supervisor.
Councilman Martin.
Yes, just a couple of brief things. I attended the meeting of the Local Development Corporation on Tuesday, September 9th, and they now have an established balance of the repayment fund. The repayments are coming in from the first loan made. And then the other thing is they have closed on a second loan to Thrive Chiropractic for $40,000 on August 28th. So activity is brisk.
Excellent. Councilman Pittavani.
Yes, I was met with the Traffic Safety Board this afternoon, and there was discussion on the crosswalk in front of the high school with some a handicapped student now that does not have access with the curbs there. There was also some talk of the traffic speed, of lowering the speed limit, and they're going to make a recommendation for changes and present that to the board at a later time. There was also discussion about stop signs in Corporation Park, and again, that also will come to the board at a later time.
Thank you. And in Councilman Ramatar's stead, because I know he would talk about it if he was here, on the 27th, we have our 5th annual Oktoberfest. It's going to be an exciting one this year, some changes. It will again go from noon to 9, but it will be in Melwood Park this year. We've had to move to a bigger venue. I think they're calling it Munich on the Mohawk, is what I think it's been dubbed as. We still have all the same great activities we've had in the past. We are adding a few new things. One of them is Wolf Hollow Brewery will be there with Oktoberfest, so Glenville will have their very own beer there for purchase, or tasting for purchase. And of course, we're adding the, what's that?
And consumption.
And consumption. And we're adding fireworks this year at 8:15 to the event over the Mohawk. So it's going to be a beautiful event. Get the word out, Facebook it, all the things we need to do, all the things you kids do nowadays. But we're getting
We still will have dunk the supervisor?
we still will, apparently at 4 o'clock if you want to come for that.
Come on,
Yeah.
it's a chance to get.
So I just wanted to do it for Councilman Ramatar, because I know he would talk about it if he was here. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is a public hearing to hear anyone on the matter to be considered on proposed local law of repeal of chapter 132 of the Code of Town of Glenville. And before I open the public hearing, just to be clear, we have 3 public hearings that are very similar, but they deal with different pieces of the code, so we have to do them separately, although they really achieve just about the same thing. The first public hearing we'll be opening is to hear anyone interested to be heard on the repeal of the Environmental Quality Review local law. This is a local law that was established the planning and zoning application review responsibility for the GECC several decades ago. This is recommended by the GECC for repeal because it is out of date and serves no value function since it essentially mirrors the legislation of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. In other words, we believe this local law is redundant to the New York State seeker legislation. And the GECC felt that since their seeker role is going to be minimized, there's no need to keep this local law around. Our zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations already articulate the GECC's role and responsibilities relative to the seeker process. So, I'll open the public hearing. If anyone wishes to be heard on this matter, please raise your hand and we ask you to the podium. Going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. Next public hearing that we'll open is again a matter to be heard regarding the local law amendment of 242 subdivision of land of the code of the town of Glenville. This one, like the next one, I'll just go through it once. They're similar, they're just changing 2 different codes. This one is retasking the GECC so that they no longer are required to review all planning and zoning applications, but rather just type 1 seeker actions. Those are the larger scale, typically larger impact projects. The town board, planning and zoning commission, the ZBA will all still have the option of calling on the GECC to review and make recommendations on any planning and zoning application they see fit and consult with the GECC on any matter. So those next 2 public hearings will deal with retasking the GECC. Public hearing number 2 is, it's number 6 on the agenda, but the second one is open. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none, that public hearing is closed. And we'll open the 3rd public hearing. Again, same thing I just read, just to for the law. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none. I like this, Judge. I like this. Better watch out. You might want to run for judge next.
Yeah, he's the crowd.
The next item is we're going to go to privilege of the floor. And I'll start with those who've signed up, and then anyone wish to be heard, just raise your hand. We'll ask you to come to the podium. I do remind residents that we do have a 5-minute limit on privilege of the floor. We loosely kind of try to adhere to that. We're going to try to adhere to that. So about 4.5 minutes in, if I ask you to summarize, just please summarize. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard, and the board will be attentive to all issues from all the residents. So we'll start first with who has signed up, and that is Peter Luker.
like to take a quick moment of silence for the 100,000 innocent Iraqis that were killed during our invasion. This is going to be a habit here. I'm still trying to get Old Dominion, the corporation across the street from our house, to aim their lights down and follow the law. I thought it was interesting that a month and a half ago when I tried to appeal the zoning board of appeals, they turned off a quarter of their lights. And I noticed that the night after they got approval for their illegal fence to actually turn it on, they turned the other quarter of the lights back on, so I can now read much better in my bedroom. The parts of the zoning law that they violate include the glare part, which has been called subjective. Again, we're being subjected to it. We have 25 neighbors who have said that's a glare, we don't want it, shield it, and they refuse to do this. Other parts of the law that they violate, which I didn't notice the first time, was the off-street loading. Lighting shall be used to illuminate off-street loading shall be configured in a manner so as not to reflect upon adjoining properties or streets. Light sources shall be shielded and projected downward. Off-street parking. All lights associated with parking areas will be directed into the parking area and away from adjacent property public right of way. Now that seems to be inconsistent, in my humble, just a son of an engineer opinion, when lights from the back of their property go 35 feet up, come across the top of their building, and light up my tree 60 feet up. It seems like they're not following the law. Now, there's a separate issue. They had a site plan, it was reviewed, it was approved. But if the site plan is, if parts of that they didn't show, like how they were going to aim their lights, are wrong and don't follow the law and are incompatible with us being able to see the stars at night, then that should be corrected. And the next step will be an Article 78 proceeding, but I'd rather just get this so that they can put shields on their lights and aim them down on their property. That means down on their property, not over on my property, but down on their property. If they want to light it up so that they need sunglasses in their parking lot, so be it. I just don't want to have to put up with that in my lot, and my neighbors don't want to have to put up with that in their lot. Again, it looks like a maximum security prison. In addition to the disrespect of our neighbors, of our neighborhood, the light, that all night long light on our property hurts our plants, hurts our animals. It's very clear, very scientific, that's what it does. 24-hour lighting. Some countries do that with people in torture. They did it down in Cuba there, Guantanamo, to torture people by keeping them in light 24 hours a day. Same thing happens with animals, the same thing happens with plants. I'm just asking that we get them, Old Dominion, to put shields on the lights and aim them down. It doesn't seem like a lot to ask. If they can't figure out how to do it, I'd be glad to come over and show them how to do it. I can draw the diagrams and show them how you put the shield on it and aim it down. And don't aim it across your property line. So, again, it took us a few years to get the hazardous waste incinerator not being built over there. And I'm back and I'm going to keep on this until they get it right. So I would appreciate any help I could get from the town to get them to do the right thing and follow the law. If there's certain laws they violate, interfere with anybody, that's one thing. But they're interfering with a lot of our lives. And I would just appreciate it if they could follow that law. Nothing, they want to waste all that energy, fine. But I just would appreciate it that they not do that to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard if there was anyone else wish to be heard? As we did last week in deference to the fact that we have a budget hearing later and we have department heads here tonight, we're gonna forego the supervisor's comments to the board. I just have one thing I want to update you on. We will be, and just recently worked with the neighborhood member. On the 24th, we'll be hosting the Oak Hill Neighborhood, not association, but the neighborhood here to speak about the proposed plan for that development of that property at Oak Hill and 50. Yes. So I won't go into a full report, but I wanted to make sure you had that on your calendar.
That's at 7?
7, so it'll be in place of a typical board meeting or work session. So we'll get right back on the agenda and go to item number 9, which is a resolution to schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, October 1st to consider a zoning map amendment. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, this is a resolution that simply sets the public hearing for consideration of a zoning amendment to our zoning map for the Maple Hill, or Maple Avenue, Freeman's Bridge Road area from research and development technology to general business. And the impetus behind this is to recognize the character that is changing out there to one of the gateways of the community. This seems to be a more appropriate zone given the character that's there.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Ketlerbani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is setting yet another public hearing for the same day regarding another zoning amendment. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, this is again another public hearing on yet another zone change. This is along Route 50 at the corner of Oak Hill Drive. The change proposed here or being considered would be from professional residential to community business, and it is in regards to the aforementioned project you just spoke of for the workshop next week. The public hearing date is October 1st.
And again, just setting the public hearing so the public at that time.
Right.
I know there's some questions from the neighbors as to
That's
what
correct.
the process was.
So I would invite all neighbors, spread the word. If they could come that night, that'd be great.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Ketlerbani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski? Yes. Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, resolution 12. Is it resolution 12? Should be resolution 11. Resolution 11. Okay, sorry, I got mixed up with my other resolution. This is a resolution to consider highway superintendent's recommendation to town board waive a street standards, the width of the street standards according to town code. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, this is the resolution that will reduce the road width standard for this particular project. It is referred to as the Amador subdivision, from 30 feet to 26. And I just want to say, for me personally, I've given this a lot of thought, done a lot of individual research, and the vote that I'll be taking is on really along 4 lines. First of all, public safety. I believe that is the number one concern in something like this. That was a primary reason for reaching out like I did to a number of sources. The functionality of the road, in terms of its ability to handle the traffic, again, safely and smoothly. Also considered the public input. We had a lot of it. And finally, it was cost. We've had some, I think, rather detailed guidance from our highway superintendent in that regard. But the method behind the vote that I'll be making was really on the basis of 2 things. Third-party input. We had very valuable input from our staff, and I appreciate that. It was very, very helpful. The town engineer and our highway superintendent, I think that's all very useful third-party input on a matter like this. And secondly, I sought out a number of empirical data sources, AASHTO, ITE, DOT, Urban Land Institute, And I researched all that thoroughly as best I could with the time I had available. And the conclusion I did reach is I think this is something, I'm speaking for me personally, I think this should be considered as part of a town-wide standard, get into our subdivision regulations and change this for all projects. And finally, I'll say, people may not agree with my vote, but I hope they'll respect it, because I did put a lot of time and effort into reaching the conclusion I did. So that's all I had to say on this.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I'd just like to add, Mr. Supervisor, that,
Oh, I'm sorry, that was a move, we need a second.
John
That was your
seconded
first-
it.
you
John
did second.
seconded
Okay,
it.
okay.
you did second.
Okay. You know, I looked at this from the standpoint that I live on a 30-foot wide street, and that if later on down the road you wanted to expand a 26-foot wide street, it would not be possible. However, after listening to many people speak and getting the word from the experts that a 26-foot wide street is safer and in turn slows the traffic down, I'm also looking at it from the point of view that this might solve some of the problems that have come up with concerns about this development being a cut-through from Spring Road over to Swaggertown. If the road is narrower and there are obstacles and the speeds are slower, it may deter some people from going in that direction. So after Superintendent Capola spoke and talked about the savings from salt and the ability to plow that road with one fewer pass, or one less pass, I have to say that I have to lean in that direction. And it's through a lot of thought, and I hope it's the right decision.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
It's just briefly, Mr. Supervisor. I always hesitate to vote on things just because one person wants them. And I think that what's happened from this proposal is something that's actually going to benefit the town over a longer period of time. And that we are going to look at changing our road width standard for subdivisions going forward. I think that the research that we looked at, that all the information that was presented to us, I'm not a road expert, I'm not a traffic expert, I'm not a traffic engineer, I drive ambulances and do that type of thing. I don't do that for a living. I have to take it on faith that all of the studies that we have looked at, all the reading that we've done, everything that has been shown to us by people who do this for a living and it's their job, show that there are a number of benefits to having a narrower road width. I think for the town personally, that's going to bring a number of benefits to the town, as Councilwoman Martin stated, savings in paving, savings in maintenance, savings in salt and sand and time and effort spent on these roads. But also from another safety standpoint, I do tend to agree with what was presented to us as far as the traffic calming that occurs with a narrower roadway, and if cars are parked on the road, it does cause people to go slower. So it's not an easy decision, but I feel more comfortable knowing that we have looked at it as a whole and not just in relation to one project. So I would ask the same thing that Councilman Martin asked, that if you don't agree with my vote, you please respect it, because I spent quite a lot of time talking about it, looking into it, researching it, and thinking about it, not just a off-the-cuff decision.
Thank you. The only thing the last one said, so I don't need to repeat it. The only thing I would add is, I think in our research, we learned through Highway Superintendent Tom Capola, that, with the stormwater management rules and regulations being handed down from the EPA through the DEC, we expect future changes to the road width, and there would be a narrow road is what's coming down from the feds to the state, and it seems like that's where it's going. So if we're looking at this project in light of the fact that these changes are going to be probably at some point mandated on the localities, I think it makes sense to look at it in light of this project. Of course, the next project, the Belmonte project, is coming back to the town. And then, of course, in our comprehensive plan and rewrite of some of our codes in a more broad aspect, it makes a lot of sense. So, with that, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, Resolution 12, accepting the proposal submitted by Synthesis for our architectural services for the Glenville Senior Center. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution is to approve the proposal submitted by Synthesis Architects at 162 J Street, in Schenectady, New York, in the amount of $18,500 for architectural services that they outlined with regard to the Scotia Glenville Senior Citizens Center that we have, that they're going to be proposing to construct a 1,000 square foot addition to the senior center. This is approving the entering into the agreement with Synthesis for the services described.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the roll.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Petrovani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution 13, approving the monthly department reports. Do I have a motion?
So
Do
moved.
I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Pretty self-explanatory, Mr. Supervisor, monthly department reports for August 2014.
Okay, no changes or anything? Seeing none, please record the roll.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Petrovani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. We now go on to our 3 add-on resolutions. Add-on resolution number 1 is correcting a typographical error in the text of resolution number 141 of 2014, adopting local law 2 of 2014. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this is simply just that. It's correction of some typographical errors. There's no change in substance or content.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Petrovani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution add-on number 2 is a resolution giving the supervisor authorization to enter into an agreement with Richard Traziak to train a new town DCO, dog control officer, at his current hourly rate of pay for a training period not to exceed 20 hours. Do I have a motion?
So
Do
moved.
I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. There are a few other things this resolution does, though. So on discussion, the second thing, it authorizes the supervisor to make an appointment of a new part-time DCO after consultation with the chief of police, town board liaison, and for a flexible schedule not to exceed 25 hours per week at a rate not to exceed $18 per hour with part-time benefits as provided by the town's agreement with CSCA if qualified candidate is found, and can commence work prior to the next town board meeting. And the third thing it does, if no DCO can be hired and commence work before September 25th, authorizes the supervisor to enter into an agreement with the neighboring municipality or municipalities to provide the interim DCO services on such terms that the supervisor, after consultation with chief of police and town board liaison, can negotiate. Essentially is in the interim between now and October 1st, if we're in need of a DCO and if we find one, it allows us to go ahead and, within the parameters of this resolution, and hire one. And if we can't find one, it allows us to negotiate an agreement with the municipality for coverage. Stopgap emergency. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Supervisor, I would just like to add, I would like to thank our dog control officer, Richard Treziak, for his many years of good and loyal service with the town.
Absolutely. I concur. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Petrovani?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes. Resolution passes. Next add-on resolution, resolution number 3. This resolution is an agreement between the town of Rotterdam. Well, actually, this resolution gives the town board hereby authorizes the supervisor to enter into a lease agreement with the town of Rotterdam on behalf of the town with the terms and conditions identified in the resolution, in review with the approval of the attorney of the town and the chief of police to give notice to terminate the American Tower agreement on the town's current lease with that entity. So this is an agreement between Rotterdam and ourselves to move our tower and terminate the American Tower lease that we currently have right now. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
I would just like to add, after you pretty much said the whole thing.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That this will become a savings for the town once this is all instituted as our agreement with the town of Rotterdam to put our equipment on their tower is considerably cheaper than what we currently have in rental agreements in the 2 towers in Glenville and the one in Niskayuna.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry about that, John, I got
That's-
carried away sometimes.
That's okay.
Seeing no other questions or comments, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Catalano?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Last item before we get to the budget hearing is new business. I'll start on the left with Councilman Wozzachowski. Any new business?
No new business, Mr. Supervisor.
Councilman Martin.
I just hope that we can get those road standards on the docket here to get those underway.
Councilman Pipelani.
No new business.
Okay, so we'll move into the budget hearing. Before we go to the budget hearing, again, just a reminder, we'll be entertaining a motion to go into executive session after the budget hearing to discuss a personnel matter. You're free to stay, but we expect to do no further public business afterwards. So I'll just go on the department budget reports as the list has been handed to me. And the first person on the list is Judge Davenport for courts. And Judge Morales is coming in. A little bit informative.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to present our budget to you, Mr. Supervisor, and the town board. As you know, last month we submitted our budget proposal, which outlines the budget as we presented it, but I want to highlight a few things and explain why I'm looking for one thing, that is a raise for our court clerks. As you know, over the past couple of years, town court handles between 4,500 and 5,000 cases. While that number has been somewhat static over the years, the type and complexity of the cases which the court has had to handle has changed. Many people think the town court just handles vehicle and traffic matters, but we do handle all misdemeanors up through and including trial, felonies up to trial or resolution, town code violations, and small claims. What has happened in the town court is we've had an increase, really a dramatic increase in the number of criminal matters that we've had to handle as misdemeanors and felonies. And attendant with handling those increased matters are increased hearings, increased discovery disputes. It just takes more and more time and court resources for us to handle the load of those types of cases. Now, I bring that up not to explain to you the intricacies of the town justice court, but to explain to you that that is why we're asking for a 2% increase for our court clerks. That's the only increase we're asking in this budget. It's been my practice and Judge Moran's practice not to ask for increases in our salaries, but our clerks are the ones who really bear the brunt of all that additional work that has come over the past couple of years. The 2% increase we're asking would only increase our budget by about $1,700. And I think it's important to show these clerks that we do recognize and appreciate the additional work they've had to do over the past couple of years because of the increase in the number of criminal matters we've had to handle. So we asked the town board to seriously consider that. $1,700 is the only increase we're asking for, and we think it's appropriate in terms of the types and complexity of cases that we're handling now. Other than that, the budget stays the same as last year. I will note there is one change from the submitted budget. Our maintenance contract with our software company, we didn't get the 2015 estimate when we submitted the budget. The line we submitted was $1,235.38. It's actually $90 more, $1,325.38. So that would be the budget item for that. But other than that, we've kept the budget the same. We have not asked for any additional increases. Our salaries are any of the budget lines in our budget.
Judge, thank you. One question I had was on the revenue side was, are we seeing any changes, anomalies, blips, increases, decreases in revenue coming through the courts?
I would say that the first 2 quarters of this year were about on par, but the last quarter, we've seen a reduction in the amount of matters that have come before the court, particularly with vehicle and traffic matters. So in terms of revenue, as you know, our revenue is dependent not on what we do so much as what kind of matters that are placed before us. we've seen an increase in criminal, that's a decrease in vehicle traffic. So that will impact revenue.
So you're seeing the flat, you kind of proposing a flat revenue for the courts in next year?
I would say a flat revenue, and hopefully not a decrease from this year.
Any questions or comments?
Judge, I see you got a new line item for court security at $22,000. Is that Glenville police officers? Is that private security?
I believe that was an accounting change, that because the court security is solely attributable to the town and not the village, we wanted to make sure that, you know, the village wasn't paying for a straight town. So I think it's more of an accounting transfer.
Remove the line so that the village doesn't pay that cost because it's time cost, so it's just moved out of the police budget.
Well, I also knew that there was police officers in the station usually during court time, which may not be the case now. So I was wondering if that was the case, that they're dedicated here and that payment comes out of your budget instead of the police budget.
There's no increase to that.
There's no increase. I think it's
Okay.
just shifting of lines. I don't think there's any real increase coming out of the court budget.
It's just glaring because it's a new line.
Yes.
By private security, are you talking about outside
Correct.
police department?
Not outside of police departments,
Okay.
whether it be.
No, there's officers designated just for
Right.
the court.
Right.
Any questions or comments?
No. I would echo what Judge Davenport just presented to you. And me being here only for 6 months, he's right on time.
You seem more familiar than just 6 months.
Yeah, I know.
Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
The next person we have on the list is Paul Davenport.
Not again.
Good evening. My budget is pretty simple. 11 items, most of them we really have little or no control over. They basically stayed the same. The only change is the personal services, which went down because we had a grant for somebody to scan historical records last year, so that came out of the budget. So it shows a decrease, but it's the same as it was. We didn't pay for the scan. So, really not a lot. We have control over there. Revenues, I bumped up from 105 to 120. They have been considerably more than that, but I just don't believe the amount of construction that we've had in the past couple of years is going to continue at the same rate. And the only other thing I have that's in my end is just the TBA budget, which stayed the same except for it's getting harder for these guys to get training. Our volunteers for the zoning board of appeals are required to have 4 hours of training. They have been putting in for, they've been taking training that costs money and we're reimbursing them. So I have 5 members at $80 each, which is $400 for the training. We're getting bargained with them. They do a great job. They spend a lot of time. They go out there, look at all the sites. They go to all the meetings. They're required to go to the training. You should certainly support them with the cost of their training.
You ever consider coordinating with Saratoga County on that training? I think they have a pretty robust program for training their zoning board and planning board.
You know, to be honest with you, the training kind of trickles down from planning, what we get from the
Right.
Regional Planning Federation. I'm not really familiar with what's happening in Saratoga. I mean, we're right next door, and I know a lot of those people, but there's not a lot of
I'm
communication.
just saying, if members, need some help with that, and I think they provided at no cost a lot of the credits up there and
If
things.
it's available, I'd like to know about it. And, we'll
Like,
certainly-
I know, for example, they have an annual conference every year at the Saratoga City Center, and they have a number of courses, and I think it's a very modest fee to attend, especially if you're a sitting member. and you can gain credit that way. Just gives them another outlet.
We can look into it. Like I say, in other years, they've been able to get other training that is free.
Right.
I can't count on that. You know, that's the problem. If you don't have, if you have nothing in your budget for it,
Right.
or if there's some relevant training that's worth paying for, you need to have $400 is really not much to have available.
Yeah, I think that county-sponsored conference up there is very, very inexpensive.
Well, I noticed the fuel this year is way down. Fuel line is like $444, and normally it tracks around.
Fuel is actually going to go out of sight this year because we have the police car, a lot of people are using it. But that, the reason the cost went down is because we had money in there to replace the car last year. And now we've replaced it. So now it really should be just, you know, minor repairs and fuel. But, I mean, the new car is being used by other departments, which is a great idea, but kind of, there's no way for me to budget for that. So
Is that all going to end up on that line, Jason, or?
For now, we can try it.
The assessors used it to go to Herkimer last week, you used it which is fine, but I don't know how you budget for that.
Any other questions or comments? Paul?
Thank you.
Next, under department head is Kevin Brookfield from planning.
Similar to Paul's budget for the building department, there's not a lot of line items for the planning department, not a lot of moving items, moving parts, I should say. There are some changes, though, that you'll notice in the personnel services line item. Most of that has to do with Chris Flanders, who up until this year, we split her salary 50-50 with Jamie's department, with Jamie going to part-time. I'm now going to assume 70% of her salary, so overall town expenses aren't going to change. It's just we're shifting around some money there. You'll also notice an addition under personal services part-time for $10,000. This is a request to keep the internship program, if you want to call it that, going. We have an intern for this year. She's working out very well. She wasn't budgeted originally in the 2014 budget, but we did add her with a maximum $10,000 stipend, like we're proposing next year. The interns, they come from the SUNY Albany Masters of Regional Planning Program. They're very good. A lot of them come with experience. They're obviously educated, and they're eager. And we've had, with the exception of maybe one dud, we've had probably 20 really good.
There's no doubt.
If you saw them. So this is not an absolutely needed position for 2015, but we expect next year the bulk of the work on the master plan will take place and hopefully wrap up.
Yep.
So it'd be good to have an extra hand. So that's what that request is for. Everything else within the budget, really, there's nothing of consequence that I noticed at least. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's a $1,700 total allocations area, so there's no changes from last year. Going to revenues for planning and zoning and engineering fees. We've had 2 very good years. This year is very good, it's going very well. 2013 was even better, but I tend to go conservative with estimated revenues. We just, we don't know what's coming our way for applications. One large application can skew it in the good direction, which is really what we've had the last couple of years. But anyway, I kind of use figures that more or less average out, or a little bit above the average from 2011 and 2012, just to say stay a little bit on the conservative side. And then the other budget under my responsibility is the GECC. There's not a lot there either, just that there's going to be a slight reduction in personal services, basically a halving of the personal services to reflect the fact that GECC won't need to meet 12 times a year from this point on, so we won't need a stenographer every month.
Question on back to the planning and revenue, engineering, planning and sales. We have actuals of 6,000, 85, 12,000, and then you're bumping up to 22,000.
Yeah, this is really a pass-through. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to hire a consultant to review applications. So money that's put up by the applicant, we keep it in escrow, we pay it out of this fund. So we've had a lot of activity the last couple of years, so that's why that's up there.
So there's an offset to that in your budget.
Yes, sir. It comes from the applicants. There's no town costs for this.
And then, the only other question I had planning was, did you see any retirements occurring in 2015?
I don't, I'm gonna ask Chris, give me a pointer. No.
Okay.
That's the way. You can ask Chris one more time.
We have.
You might have a retirement if you ask him.
Well,
That's a joke.
the answer gets a little more definitive, we don't have to keep asking. It's, you know, it's not so definitive. Problematic. Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is Jamie Parks and Senior Center. Tom was already there.
Obviously, we won't need to go through line item by line item. I think it makes sense to go to the bottom lines. In parks, overall, as you can see, it's down, actually up slightly, I should say, about $8,000 altogether. Mainly comprised of two areas. There's really no difference in substance on the personal services line. Highway department, a couple employees have kind of moved their regular services to parks, and then the chargeback works the other way, as opposed to years ago they were highway employees with the chargeback to the park. So not really anything of note in the personnel lines. A couple things I wanted to point out that account for that increase there. One is shown under equipment as a mower lease. We have been repairing for a number of years and doing extensive repairs on the main lawn mower that we have. It's an 11-foot cutting deck, all hydraulic. It's got a lot of hours on it, so it is slated for replacement. As that mower new costs around $75,000, even on state contract, it puts it in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. A lease purchase agreement is an option. In talking with the company, that $10,000 figure that's budgeted is essentially right in the ballpark for a lease on a new, it would be in all likelihood a Jacobson mower. It has seemed that it makes the most sense to have really good lawn mowing equipment, as opposed to having a lot of people using bad equipment, having few people use really high quality, very efficient equipment. So that is that $10,000 figure, which of course is higher than in years past. Isn't a figure that we would, it is a figure we would need to have in there for 5 to 6 years. After that, it would go away when the lease was up. So that's what that figure represents.
Is it a lease to own, Jamie?
Yes, lease to own.
On that question, Jamie, you mentioned expensive to maintain right now. What line is that expensive?
It wouldn't be broken out. It would be in total in our, could be partly contracted services. It could also be under personal services, as we have specific chargebacks from the highway department. So the highway department would have to break out what those expenses are on the equipment. Tom Capola, I think, would be able to speak to that a little bit more in terms of mower. I mean, I remember 2 years ago or so, we put roughly $6,000 worth of hydraulic work into that mower.
Equally this year.
Equally this year. It's used every day. It's got thousands of hours on it. Getting to a point where it needs replacing. And that's really one of the major things that we do in all of our maintenance in parks. We got a lot of grass to cut.
So the logical question is there $6,000 reduction somewhere in this budget that offsets the $10,000 expenditure?
I would not be familiar with that.
That would be, if it is a new mower, it would be under warranty, it's 3 years, so the only thing you'd be responsible for is consumables, so it would be an offset for expenditure through the interdepartmental transfer.
And maybe
So yes, I would have to then, go to Tom and Jason, as to exactly where that would show up within the park budget, that the fees that we have been getting charged to repair the mower, as well as, I would think certainly some of it would be supplies and materials line. There would be less expense there. So it would be bits and pieces in a couple different places that would amount to that.
I think we have to look at that, and I think we have to look at what its value is for scrap. I mean, there's got to be some value on that.
It would have an exchange value. I mean, I'm also looking at, I spoke to the representative, there's a lightly used mower of the same overall design, might be around 30,000. We haven't really checked whether there's good value in that particular one yet. That would be an outright purchase at that. So we're looking at other options. This would be the best new mower option.
They call those lightly used, previously enjoyed.
Depending on, yes, how much they were cutting and all that. So we're checking out that option. We should have information on that within a couple of weeks, so within this budget period. The other item in there that's a large item would be the contracted services. We had really 9 of the $10,000 this year slated to do tennis court surface repair. By the time I got the quotes, and we got into the middle of summer, didn't seem to make sense to do them, even last month or now, as opposed to the beginning of next year. It is something that we do not have to do in any given year, but the longer you put it off, the further the court deteriorates, and then it does cost a little bit more. So we would dedicate roughly 12 of that potentially $16,000 next year to resurfacing both of the tennis courts at Indian Meadows Park. It would actually not give a complete resurface to both. Complete resurfacing would come in even yet higher than that. But what it would do would be repair all cracks and get both courts at least one new coat of the sealant on, colored sealant. And this would be done by Copeland Coatings, who are the acknowledged professionals in the area to do that kind of stuff. So that's what accounts for that line being higher. And if I could editorialize just for one quick moment, as we contemplate developing the dog park, we have a revised plan on that. It did go out to the public. We had a public hearing on it, a meeting at Senior Center a couple of months ago. The plan has been revised. So we're working with them, but that's going to be an additional area that we're looking to develop. Also, Malwick Park, we have kind of had the archaeological review taking one half step back because the price tags as we're coming in on that were high enough that we're now, at the recommendation of the state, working on a minimal ground disturbance method of developing the park. After we get that plan back, we will send it out for bid, and then the archaeological investigation will be what it is. When we go forward with that development, we'll have, in addition to what we have now, the dog park and Malwick Park, we will have increased road maintenance needs, we'll have increased grass cutting needs. It just all generally adds up, additional equipment, part-timers in the summer. And so I just wanted to mention that now relative to if this is where we're heading with our development, we have to do some things in our budget to make sure that we're able to maintain once we get there. So I think we're okay for now. We're doing pretty good. Tom and the guys that he has do a nice job. I think people certainly appreciate our parks. I think our roads need a little bit of work in there. Our tennis courts need a little bit of work. Our equipment needs some upgrading. So we don't have any crises or anything, but it's just something that we should kind of keep an eye on, looking to as we develop. So that's that. Historian, nothing major changing there, so unless there are particular questions there. Slight increase, we now have internet access there, so it's slightly higher in that regard, but it's obviously something that Joan Zabluski and her assistant use quite a bit in their day-to-day operation there. Lastly, in the senior center, one fairly significant change is with the retirement of our maintenance helper. The personal services lines have an obvious reduction there. So that is the largest reduction. Overall, as you can see, the bottom line, when you go to the second page, has gone down. That's at $21,000 and change there. We do have a notation in there, which I believe will be coming out. Tom Coppola and I spoke about the need. The senior center was constructed in 1996. That paving was done there. So we're starting to approach 20 years on the pavement, which is good. We've sealed it a couple of times, but according to Tom and contractor, it will need a top coat. The estimate for that is $30,000. I had originally put that in the budget, but as we're looking to potentially do the construction of the addition next year, it doesn't seem to make sense to have new asphalt and then potentially beat it up with heavy equipment. It is something that can be deferred, but I think it's another item that you're able to look at now. It seems to make sense to not do it in 2015, but it would, I think in a best case scenario, be done in 2016. The addition of the senior meals for $5,000, which didn't show up previously, was just a movement from a different place in the budget. It had been kind of under human services. It's not actually, Jason has been finding things that seem to make sense in different places, and so there's no new money there as opposed to movement from another place in the budget. And with that, I would entertain any questions you may have.
Let me ask them, the park fund, I know we get obviously fees for development, park development fund. I don't know, is that off budget line? I don't see it in the budget.
Correct.
So I don't know exactly where we are with that, or where we are with our different developments. Appears that maybe Amador's paid some or all, or I don't know. Do you anticipate, any more revenue in 2015 in that line?
Well, I think we do want to check, obviously, on, there appeared to have been a partial payment on the Amador project, but it doesn't seem to match up to what you would typically anticipate at $1,000 per lot. So that one needs to be looked at. We have approximately $385,000 in that subdivision recreation fee fund now. If, in accepting the grant for the development of Malibu Park, we have to match the 250, that's 250 of the 385. We then would have a substantial amount of archaeological work to do over and above that. Our quick estimates previously were running $185,000 to $225,000, which, as I told the archaeologist, that number is dead on arrival. There's just no way we're going to pay that kind of money to do that. Hence, doing a reduced ground disturbance plan. But archaeological is certainly going to be something over 50, probably closer to 100. So now you're up to 350 to 385. Additionally, right now, the estimates for the dog park are coming in at around 57,000. So with that, there's not a lot of extra to go to there. If we were to get the Amador project, which I believed at 140 homes at 1,000 per, that influx of $140,000 would obviously be a huge benefit. How much has come in now? That's something that Jason and I are trying to, we'll get to the bottom of it tomorrow, I would think.
The Belmonte project's already in.
Belmonte project is in.
And
Apartments come at 400 per, and I believe they are all in. Glenville's in.
And these guys.
Patriot Square is in.
So it's just residential development, not commercial development, correct?
Correct. Residential is at 1,000 per lot, and apartments are at $400 per unit. And really, the 385 that's in there is all the development that has occurred over the last probably 8 to 10 years. So we've been saving for these very projects. That's why we really don't have a lot in the base budget to go to in terms of, oh yeah, we have annually X amount more money to put into kind of capital needs. And I think that would be some of the bigger money that we're talking about. So that's why, without fear-mongering in any way, we have some very good parks. We do a good job with them now. We have some great development potential. Absent some base budget dollars, I don't think we'll have a whole lot of money in that subdivision rec fee to keep going to that well once we develop the parks.
Any questions or comments?
Hope that wasn't too sobering. It's all good in a way. So. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I guess all we have left is much anticipated. Linda and I talked. If you want to go over it, there's only one change. We thought we could save some time. The only change Linda has is, and I guess your budget, if you want to talk to the board.
Yeah, the only change is I did put in asking for a 1.5% salary increase for my deputy and myself. We do see an increase, of course, like any of the other employees here, being that we're down a lot of staff members. Our tasks are many more than they were, so, we were just asking for that. Everything else is basically, I don't really see any increases in revenue that, you know, would be outstanding. Everything seems to be just about the same as it was last year, this current year.
I could say you're doing a lot of hunting licenses for sure.
The hunting licenses, I think we will see an increase in that revenue. It's hard for me to determine right now because
Need more weddings.
we've probably tripled in hunting
Yeah.
license sales from last year, yeah. It's pretty much the same like it was.
Any questions or comments for Linda? That was quick.
Payments.
Now the much anticipated highway superintendent Tom Capola.
Which one would you like to start with? Which one would you like to start with?
Let's go with water. We got water, sewer, and highway.
Water, sewer, and highway. Okay, so water, sewer, overall expenditures are down about $100,000 in this budget, and it was due to offset the revenue loss from Clifton Park. So if you go through the line items, come down through here, just start right at the top. Follow your line items over, you'll see the deductions that we made. You want to go through these one by one? You want to?
Oh, no, just like others, just highlight what you think is,
Yeah, you go through the districts, you'll see the same small decreases in equipment lines on those, and that was just to offset the loss of revenue. So we brought that, we did break it down to 100K. It still does not cover our loss of revenue for the Clifton Park, though.
this, I guess the big item to talk about in the water fund is the potential now that Clifton Park has left of deficit, perhaps in 2015. You're looking at any type of deficit. I know prior to Clifton Park, we had about a $400,000 hole in the blood. We're looking at not Clifton Park.
We're still looking at that loss of revenue, so we're about 300,000 to the offset of 100K coming down. So in the future, we're gonna have to start to anticipate maybe looking at our water rates. And, you know, that process will be another work session. We'll cover the basics on that, timeline you have to do it. And, you know, we have potential new customers coming on, but we can't count on the new customers at this point. So we are in water. That's
When's the last time you looked at a rate change in water?
2001, over 10 years. Yeah, it's been 10 years, a bit over 10 years.
14?
Oh, three.
Oh, 3?
Yeah.
10, 11, maybe 12 years.
12 years. So we're gonna have to start to look at those in the future here. And you can see, you can look at the, if you look at the revenue lines coming in, you'll look down through there and you'll see, you know, the metered water sales. And I think whatever we decide to do with a lot of this is people not turning in their cards, we get zeros. So our revenue is coming in, it'll reflect the actuals. Any questions on that page? Go to Water District, if you want, we'll start with Water District 3. Yeah, that's on the first page. And you can see that maintenance repair, you go down to that, $5,800 was 85. You can pretty much consistently go through these districts and see the deductions. There is some equipment in here that, we talked about equipment purchases for the water department, meaning vehicles. And as always, in these districts, at any given time, something could happen and we could be looking at costs that we're not even knowing right now, depending on what brakes we have in those, how many brakes, pumps, valves, things of that nature. You know, those are things that can come up in any district at any time. And we have we still have a healthy reserve there that we can go back to and do these anticipated repairs.
Okay, any questions on the water?
Any questions on water?
Looks pretty straightforward.
Sewer? Yep. Sewer. Sewer's down about 70K in this budget. That's due to, we paid off of bond early, saved $21,000 in paying off a bond early. We also have made small cuts in the districts, and a lot of this has got to do with debt reserve. So we have debt reserve in these districts, so we cut the cost down of the budget. And that reflects a $70,000 savings in the district. And again, in those districts, we have unanticipated costs, and very hard to budget in some of these areas because, you know, our infrastructure now is getting old. So we do have a healthy reserve in that, so if anything does come up, we should have no problem covering that too.
Do we have provisions for the new Sunnyside district in here?
We do.
I don't know if it'll be online.
So that would be, you know, you're probably 2 years out on that, so that would be reflected in 2015 anticipated budget, moving forward to 16. And that should cost the town no money, so that's in water, now we're talking, so,
Yeah, water.
yeah, that shouldn't cost the town any money. No, to follow that, if sewer does come up, we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it with the residents. Any questions on those two?
You have meal allowance of $20 a year. You eat like once a year.
Very light, very, very light. Okay, highway. Keep it down from highway, we start with highway superintendent, it's the first one. That stayed flat, that stayed where, if you look at the trend from 2011, if you're wondering what those numbers reflect, that was Jeff Jermaine. So, in the non-replacing of a retirement, we did backfill the position, so that left the budget from actually 11 to 249, and we've been trending at that 280, or that 87,000 range, so that's where the deductions are, if anybody needs to know that. Highway, we've had some, if you go through the highway garage, we went from 6,000 to 10,000, that's an anticipated lift that we need, which should be offset by revenue. We recently brought in a couple fire departments to do some small work for them on their small vehicles. So we should see a small revenue generator from that. And we are in the process of now reaching out to the rest of the fire departments to see if we can help maintain their small vehicle fleet. And it's nothing to do with the trucks themselves, it's just small chief's vehicles, rescue vehicles, things like that. So we should see a small revenue out of that.
So the lift is 4,000, or are you gonna require the entire 10?
The lift is 4,000, the one that we're looking at. It's a 12,000 pound lift. We have in that line, we also have an offset from other equipment that we have there, which would be a trade-in, basically, is what it comes out to be. So we'll offset the balance of that. Utility costs, just from what's trending, we upped that to 42,000, 32,000, we added $10,000 in that. And if you look at where we're going on that, it looks to be running right now back down to the 35,000 range. If you look at what the half year, 24,000 was expended, we're looking at the next several months from the heating and fuel costs, so we anticipated a $10,000 increase in that line.
What's the renovation line as well?
Renovation
The air
line no, what's the same?
Well,
Which one are you
it's
looking
just
at?
actual in 13 was $1,000, and 12 was $779.
Right, that was we had to do the renovations to the back per DEC to remove our in-ground lift. That stuff, those renovations have been made. We're looking at another one now, we have to remove some tanks and remediation of fuel in the front. So those costs are being driven by DEC.
And then the last question I had on there was personal services, highway garage had zeros, and then in 13 it had 50. You were saying, who's that?
On personal services?
Yeah.
That was, we had changed those lines to reflect from 12 and 11.
Yeah.
We went to 50,000, we changed those lines, so that reflects the mechanics.
That's Tammy.
What's that?
That's Tammy, and she had been up in the top part.
Oh, that's right.
altogether.
Sorry, that was Tammy.
Oh, okay.
And she had been up in the 50-10 line, 11 and 12, it appeared. And then
Oh.
it broke down.
I got you, I see, yeah. All right.
Then go to the back of that page. Building and grounds. And you'll see in that one, There's some notes, do you have the notes in yours?
Yeah,
Okay. You know, going across that with contractual, you'll see the note on that. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. We've got, just with the contract on that one, that's the only question that we had on that.
yeah, well, that's not in the highway budget, that's in a different budget.
We have that also.
Yeah, so that's coming out.
Yeah.
So that's 10, 3, and 1,000. It looks like.
So then go to engineering. This would be Dana. And the only change we had here was a vehicle replacement for him, $20,000, which would replace that Ranger that he has now, which would, the Ranger that he has would actually go back into highway and see whatever the cost of that was, whatever the value of it is, would be replaced by highway for that, would be an offset. And then the rest of the contractual engineering, you'll see what that is, that's money in, money out. Then goes to building and grounds, we have, the air conditioner, fixing of the air conditioner. We have, renovations, which would be generator setup for, Outback, the one that we purchased to get that installed here. And that next one you'll see, that's the same thing. Yeah, the one from back, yep. You got it.
What's the clean contract thing, is that coming out to?
19,000. So it's the 19,000 cleaning contract.
That's the same, we just laying it down because we didn't know where that cleaning contract was coming from. That's all.
Is that zero?
Yeah, that's.
Well,
It's 2,000.
yeah.
Yeah, 2014 had 19,000, and it says you used 10,000 for
That's good.
fees for services.
Yeah, that's not gonna be in there, that's not gonna be in there.
Well, the cleaning contract won't be in there, it'll be elsewhere. That's when we hire people to fix things, outside vendors to fix things around.
So we're
So
gonna,
that's gonna stay
Down?
the same.
oh, it stays the same, 19?
Yeah.
Anything else, Tom?
The changes, that's about everything. And the rest of them, we've got. If there are any changes in here, we're gonna have,
Are you on the highway fund now?
yeah, and the fund for the region. You'll see the, loan violations in there, slash revenue,
Yep.
no anticipation there. Everything else stays the same now.
This is known about Dawson Bridge, are we gonna try to do that this year?
We tried to do that this year, we spent the engineering money on that already to find out what we needed.
Right.
And that price was coming, we're waiting right now to see if we can, we'll have to put a bridge back or we can go to a bottomless culvert.
Right.
So we don't know where that's gonna be yet until they tell us what we can do. But estimated cost on that was somewhere between 160 and 200,000 on that. And we can offset some of that by, using some of the CHIPS money.
Using what?
We have to, CHIPS money, we can offset that by using some, depending on what they let us do. If it's a bottomless culvert or a bridge, that depending on what we actually spend it on. The engineering study came back and actually rated that bridge last year as being safe to the weight limit that it's posted for right now, but it definitely needs some attention.
Your contractual line in 11 and 12 is about $1,000, and then 13, 20, and then we budgeted 37.9, but you only spent 1,000 so far, 1,400 actually, and then you're asking for 37.977 again. What's in that line?
Where are you at?
Contractual, under general repairs, the 4,000,
Right underneath.
Yeah,
contractual, 4,000.
contractual,
It looks like there's very little spending in there, but we budget 37.977.
That's just basically for, it's got to do the repairs that we can contract out for.
And supplies and materials.
Yeah, that's supplies and materials, that's what that is.
I guess the question, is it real? I mean, we've spent $1,000 generally over the past couple of years.
Well, it depends on what it is, that's, I mean, it depends, it's nice to have there. if we
Well, in
need it, it's there.
2013, we spent 20 grand, and 2012 was 1,000, so.
Yeah, it's weird. But we're back to spending about 1,400 so far.
That's good.
It is good.
It's It's good.
But we have to be accurate in our budgeting, so I just guess we have to look at that line. See what's in there.
We're at snow removal. You're down, salt prices are going up. Going down with that line, go to 175, it's at 165, we have got $10,000. We know that that's going up probably about $8 a ton right now. That's where it's trending out to be. So it's about a $10,000 increase if we use the same one we used last time. That's where that trended to. Gas, grease, and oil, same thing. Bumped about $5,000 just on trending.
What's driving your, in machinery, straight overtime?
Straight overtime.
We've gone from 4,000 up to 9,000 this year already, and we're asking for 12,000. Just looks like historically it's been lower.
As the equipment gets older, we do more.
What's that?
As the equipment gets older, we do more. You looking at snow removal, where are you, snow removal?
Machinery, 1,002 lines.
1,002 line.
4,500, 4,100, 98. And then we budgeted 10, we're at 93, and then we're asking for 12. Just straight OT. Straight OT, under machinery.
Where are you?
Highway fund appropriations,
Yep.
machinery.
Highway fund appropriation.
It's under personal services. I mean,
Supplies material?
straight overtime, machinery, 1,002. It's line 5130.1002.
I know.
And we can,
On the
Second
second page.
page.
Well, you're back to the second page.
we'll have time to talk around that, it just stands out as a increase over the, the trend is increasing.
Oh, you're talking, yeah, okay, machinery, I got you. A little skewed on my thing, can't see it. Okay. Straight overtime. Depending on what we do for, that one came in at 9,300. This is depending on what kind of comp time is taken. So we're getting full on comp time. So we have to make appropriations for the overtime in that line that we're gonna have to pay. So if the comp time continues to grow and we max out, we're gonna have to start doing pay for that. So we have to make sure that we have it.
Okay.
And then stay right on that one.
All right. Brush and weed, you have contractual, 15,000. Again, that's traditionally been a little bit lower, just looking to do more.
We're looking to do more. All right, so where are you now? Are you back to highway appropriations?
We always were on highway appropriation.
You backed up though.
Yeah, now I'm on snow
We're
removal.
on to the last one. Snow removal.
Salt prices are going up.
Salt prices are going up. We're looking at probably $8 a ton. On that. And that's state contract. Last year I was able to buy outside the state contract and get it cheaper, but that happens about halfway through the year when installed supplies start staying, when they have too much, you can outsource it to these other companies and it actually comes in cheaper. So.
We just gave you narrow roads, so you're gonna say.
Right,
It's not built yet, but.
right.
13% gone.
And then if you go down to the rental equipment line, in snow removal, we've always maintained zeros in that line. And we're gonna maintain zeros in that line, but just so everybody's on the same page, if we do have a breakdown this year, I have set up kind of a reserve with these other municipalities to get equipment, and it's the first time that we've agreed to do that. So there'll be an intermunicipal agreement, but there'll be a charge for those vehicles. So insurances and stuff like that, you go to the highway, keep going down to department account, employee benefits, debt service bond, that's all Jason. You know that what's trending there. It's got nothing new for us.
And that is what it is.
Yeah, that is what it is right, and you go through the real property taxes and stuff like that, that is what it is also. Property maintenance fees. That would increase to $2,500 from $1,000, which would be offset. And then, fuel sales. You consider the fuel sales went from 113 to anticipated 116,000. We've got, permits, excavation permits. $500 on that line, depending on what goes on in the development of town. And you'll see CHIPS appropriation still the same. We did have a carryover from the CHIPS appropriation from last year, and we'll have another one this year because we have spent on drainage instead of paving. We have about another maybe $65,000 coming out of that line this year. So there'll be a rollover. Check with the state, we can roll over again, so we'll have the revenue to spend on it next year. Next year, we'll start the paving program where we left off with the drainage. So we'll be doing drainage and paving at the same time. So
How real is that 160? Is that already in stone?
yeah, it is what it is. That's what we get. That's based on mileage. That's based on our roads and mileage. So that's what we get. We had a little bump this year with the disaster money. I think we ended up with another $21,000 in that from every municipality got it, not just us. And that was based on mileage too. And we can't anticipate any FEMA. We don't anticipate any FEMA.
Can you talk a little bit about your retirement possibilities?
We have, possibly we have 4 people that can possibly go this year. Realistically, I would say probably 2, but we do have 4. And we also have, I think, not that he's probably going, but Dana will be eligible in another couple of weeks, I believe. Dana will be eligible in another couple of weeks, I believe.
Oh, Dana.
Yep. So yeah, I'm pretty much sure about the 2, and then there's 2 more that can go. And then that trend is gonna follow for the next 5 years, because we have a senior workforce, so we've got guys over the next 5 years that department's gonna go through some pretty drastic employment changes here pretty quick, which will be it'll help and it'll hurt, but we'll get through it. If you've got the senior workforce, it's all going out, bringing new guys in, bringing them through the ranks, so for the steps and longevity and things like that, we'll see a 5 or 6 year reprieve going through that, and then it will start to build back up again. What else do you need to know?
Any questions, comments?
So, I guess my only question would be with regard to the possible municipal agreements. Do we have like agreements on file already, or do we need to start working on those? For the rental equipment under snow removal, it said you made a deal with the municipalities.
Right, and I don't have them yet, we just started doing it, so and basically that fee is based on the feed prices really. So what it is.
That was something that we would have to see though. when-
We would have to write it.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
I'm glad. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today.
We are done today, yeah. We are done with department presentations. So with that, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We go to executive session, you're free to stay, but we don't anticipate any business afterwards. Have a good evening.